Family are more supportive of personal choices today. I mean, today, especially in the world that we are in, the traditional expectations still play a big role in our lives as millennials. We are the ones that are outspoken and have a mind of our own. Do traditional expectations still play a big role anyway in our life? Or has the times changed the way family pressures are being handled, especially by us millennials? The time will be expecting some more responses on these questions tonight on the voices of the millennials right here on last day after the news of radio. Now, social media often adds to these questions, by setting unrealistic standards. I think social media is also influencing the way people feel about themselves and how families and again society is expecting, to put our standards on all of these questions that need answering. Do you think that people today feel
Get ready to turn up your Wednesdays. Join us on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Radio for the Voices of the Millennials show, your ultimate midweek fix of inspiration and excitement.
With me, your regular host, Annamaria Amissah.
Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we dive deep into the minds of today's game changers and trendsetters.
So turn up the radio.
And guess what? We've remodeled the show just for you. Introducing our brand new Millennials Trends News Bulletin. Stay ahead of the curve with the latest buzz in tech, fashion, music, culture, you name it. All packed in one
Michelle, on mute, please. Let's go.
Kemi Famous.
Michelle. Yeah. When she starts,
tune in every Wednesday
when she starts,
p.m.
go,
Music Radio.
do most of the talking because her
one
thing is not that
at a
good.
time. It's more than just a show. It's your connection to the millennials.
Annamaria,
Only on
yeah, we can. Michelle, can you hear her? Yeah, I know. She's using her phone, and that is the reason. So do most of the talking. Yeah. So, Annamaria, we're going back. Hello.
yeah?
Okay. All right. So Michelle will be taking it right away.
Join us on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Radio for the Voices of the Millennials show,
Okay,
your
so
ultimate midweek fix of inspiration and excitement.
With me, your regular host, Annamaria Amissah.
Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we
You ready?
dive deep into the minds of today's game changers and
Michelle, let's go. Yeah. Okay.
We've
I'm
remodeled
going
the
out.
show just for you. Introducing our brand new Millennials Trends News Bulletin. Stay ahead ahead of the curve with the latest buzz in tech, fashion, music, culture, you name it, all packed in one electrifying segment with
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Michelle and I'm excited to be with you once again with our lovely host Annamaria. Today we're going to be exploring anything about societal and family pressures. And we're excited that you'll be joining us today. So please feel free to pitch in, to introduce yourself, introduce your any suggestions that you have, any questions that you have. And we're definitely happy to to hear from you, because this is a conversation, as you know. It's never one point of view. We tolerate every point of view here. It's a safe space, by the way. So I think I'm just gonna kick it off. And as usual, we always define what the topic is. And since we're talking about family pressures, we want to know what you think about family pressures. What are family pressures mean to you? I think I'm gonna start. Um, so as myself, as you know, I always tell the story. And myself being a millennial, family pressures at this stage of my life looks like, what's the next thing for you in terms of career? What's the next thing for you in terms of finances? How you breaking through that? Having moved to Canada, I've been doing a lot of the finances myself, taking care of myself since I got here. It's been about 7 years since I got here, since I moved here, and fortunately, I've been blessed to be able to take care of myself. So, it's just like the next question is, okay, what does that look like for you? Are you trying to settle down? Are you trying to start a family? There's a lot of questions and pressures like that from my family. I don't know about you, but is Anne Marie here? Because I would love to hear from you as well. Okay. So we don't have Anne Marie here, but I'm just gonna continue. Yeah. So I think usually other family pressures that we seem to encounter for most people around this stage of life is finding a partner. The not unfortunate, but we've moved past an era where it's a lot of arranged marriages. We're now in an era where people are looking for love, trying to explore what companionship looks like beyond marriage as an institution where it's full of responsibilities. And so there's a lot of questions around, okay, how do I find a partner in a multicultural setting, for example, where my life is a lot limited to like work or school, and I don't necessarily have like family or like, I guess, sort of similar friends here. I think one thing that I realized here in Canada, for example, is that a lot of people relate no, a lot of people rely on dating apps, for example. But I don't know about different people's dating app experiences. The little that I know is that people just keep getting disappointed on here. The expectations are different. A lot of people just want to, uh, just something more casual as opposed to something more, I guess, deep and meaningful. And so there's always that disconnect there. People just are hoping for something more than just a one night stand, for example. And so it makes dating like difficult. But that doesn't eliminate the fact that our families are still applying pressure, for example, to find a partner. And so I think that's um, one of the things on my list. The second one is financial pressures. There's a lot of, I was speaking to one of my friends soon, and she was telling me about how she's transitioning jobs, for example, which is really exciting. But we're in a setting where a lot of jobs, for example, are based on contract companies, organizations. Myself, I started with a contract organization as well. And so it makes it difficult to negotiate, for example. But families still be asking the questions like, how do you take care of us? How do you take care of how can you are you getting to the point where you can kind of support? I have two younger siblings, and so I like to support them as well. So there's that pressure financially, and financially as well. It gets to a point where your parents, for example, are hoping that if you're pursuing education, if they, for example, help you in your bachelor's, for you to take care of your master's yourself. But it's like there's so much pressure because I've not attained that financial stability yet. And so it's a bit difficult on that side. And so I think many of us face that as well. Even financial pressures into settling down, for example. I know that a lot of I think that a lot of families, for example, if like in the Ghanaian culture, for example, the man is marrying the woman, and so it makes it really, really, it puts a lot of pressure on the male to be able to attain a certain financial status to settle down. Not to talk about the weddings. Whoa, like those are a different conversation altogether. Ghanaian weddings, if you've seen any of them, it's pomp and pageantry. It's like 6 events for one wedding, which is like crazy. Really, really a lot of pressure. And wedding planners, since I'm like one myself, it's a lot of work. And so there's a lot of high charges. Decor is super expensive. Let's not talk about food. Food prices? No. Like food prices, ridiculous. Highly ridiculous. And so that's another really, really that's a lot of pressure financially. Whether you're trying to pursue your education, whether you're trying to settle down, whether you're trying to support your family in a place where, like Toronto, if you live in Toronto, you know that most people are working on average 2 jobs to be able to even pay their rent, get like good meals to eat on a daily. Now, not to even talk about sustaining like lifestyle. That, no, we're not even going there yet because I don't know if you're able to like survive if you're able to survive without like a second job. Like it's hard. And then transportation just like slows everything down. Like no offense to like public transport. They're really doing a good job. I see all the work at Eglinton. I see all the new lines that are being built. Thank you to the provincial government that ensures that this happens. But still the wait times are a bit much. So it makes it a bit difficult to move around. And so with all that, you might want to get a car, which is another my next pressure point. Cars. That's another family pressure for me, because I'm in a state where I would absolutely love to have a car, and I know how much difference it will make to myself and if my siblings come and join me because they want to come and pursue education here as well. But cars are expensive, and insurance. You don't want to talk about that. That takes a lot chunk of your money. I don't know if you're feeling the same thing. If you are, please feel free to send a message. As you know, we always go back to these chats and see what we can, any other topic that we can contribute to make this show all about you, because it's all about the millennial experience, not mine, not Anne-Marie's, the experience, the millennial experience for all. Yeah, so I think another thing, I've spoken about settling down, I've spoken about financial pressures. I think I'm going to take my third point and then we might go on a commercial break. Yes, so my third point is housing. Housing is a lot of pressure. Like getting a house, like getting a house, like getting a house, like buying a house. But buying a house is a lot of pressure. One thing that I learned recently, it's not just like saving for the down payments. There's so many other things that you have to also account for when buying a house, which is something that we often don't really look at because there's home insurance. Beyond that as well, there's a lot of emergencies and repairs that you have to look at depending on the since here we have like extreme weathers as well, summer versus winter. You also need to make sure that your have like your ventilation and everything is appropriate in that manner as well. But we don't really consider all these things, and it's like, oh, when I get a certain age I want to have a house by like 30, for example. And that is a lot of pressure from families because people want to come visit you, want to come like see where you stay, see have a comfortable stay, for example, as opposed to like living in a hotel. Because I say again, in like Ghanaian culture, for example, the home is comfort, right? And so that's another family pressure that we experience, or I myself experience as well, is about getting a home. But one thing I've come to learn is that getting a home is not for everybody as well. That's something that you might have to live with. Like, it's okay to save towards it. It's okay to, which is the goal. Trust me, I'm really saving to get the house, and I'm gonna come with a key when I do get it. But it doesn't take away the fact that there's a lot of pressure, because everybody's like, oh, I want to get a car, I want to get a house, I want to get a house. But it really is really expensive. And I see a lot of people really struggle with mortgages, and if not taking care, it can actually affect your mental health. But not to say don't pursue it, please pursue it, because I want you to invite me to your house. That is one of the things that is a lot of pressure in our generation, for example. And so please be careful. If you can't afford a house at the time, you can afford a condo, please get a condo instead. If you have to rent, please rent. Don't feel like you're wasting money by renting. You're investing in your accommodation. That's spending on yourself, which you deserve. You work hard after all. And so please invest in taking care of yourself and your accommodation. And don't ever think that is a waste of your time or a waste of your money or anything like that. But please, family, just be conscious when applying pressure for things like that. If you're visiting and the person can't host you, for example, in their home, please, it's okay. It's a phase of life. Accept the hotel that you're being offered, for example, or feel free to meet outside if that's what the person can afford. So we encourage less pressure on the housing front as well. So for now, we've discussed settling down, which can look like partnership for you, which can look like marriage for you. We've also discussed financial pressures, and then we've discussed housing, for example. I think we're going to take a commercial break at this point, and I will be right back.
Get ready to turn up your Wednesdays. Join us on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Radio for the Voices of the Millennials show, your ultimate midweek fix of inspiration and excitement.
With me, your regular host, Annamaria Amissah.
Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we dive deep into the minds of today's game changers and trendsetters.
So turn up the radio.
And guess what? We've remodeled the show just for you. Introducing our brand new Millennials Trends News Bulletin. Stay ahead of the curve with the latest buzz in tech, fashion, music, culture, you name it. All packed in one electrifying segment with Kemi Famous. Don't miss out. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Radio. Hear the voices that are shaping our world one trend at a time. It's more than just a show. It's your connection to the millennial heartbeat. Only on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Radio.
once in a lifetime. Try and have a nice time. Go lo 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 lo. Go lo, go lo, go lo lo. Go lo 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 lo. You only live once in a lifetime. Try and have a nice time. Go lo.
Hello, everybody. We're back. Hope you enjoyed the commercial break. Today we're missing Kemi Famous, but I'm sure next week she'll be right here with a lot of news for us. I'm always loving Kemi's news. Her fashion news, for example, especially, absolutely love it. Like the trends that she shares on here, really, really relevant. And I think some of the tips, if you really look at those, you can actually get some tips and tricks here and there. Missing Annamaria here as well. Shout out to Annamaria, our best and favorite host. Annamaria carries the show, and we absolutely miss her. And so next week, we'll be looking forward to her as well. So back to our conversation. Before, in the first half, we spoke about settling down with a partnership, marriage, whatever that looks like for you. We also spoke about financial pressures. And we also spoke about housing. And so I think the next segment, we're just going to talk about 3 more things, and then we'll be wrapping up the show. So fourth on my list is work. And when I'm talking about work, it's basically about jobs and occupation, and the type of jobs, which is a lot of family pressure. So here's one of the, I have a scenario, right? Back home, for example, and Ghana to be specific, there are certain skill traits are not cherished as much. And so a lot of people look out for white collar jobs, for example, and so you working in a bank, working at what's it called, as a lawyer, as a doctor, but occupations like carpentry, electricians, anything around that is more handy and traits on are not really appreciated. But guess what? Here is the reverse. And so I had a cultural shock coming in here and realizing that, whoa, construction workers, truck drivers, and carpentry, anything that is more handy makes a lot of money here. And those talents are really treasured. But guess what? I have a friend who's really, really talented in selling cars. He's a salesperson through and through. I'm telling you, he can sell a pen to you for $100 and you would buy it because of the way he puts things together. I'd be like, do we use the same dictionary? But he really knows how to sell things. And so one of the things that I see as a pressure for him, for example, is his parents want him to go more into white collar jobs, as opposed to using his talent for a trade, a more entrepreneurial thing. I don't know if there's a pressure for you, but feel free to share that in the comment section if you find that is a pressure for you, for example. I think that it's about time that eyes are opened and we start looking at professions based on our talents as passions as well, which is something that we spoke about in one of our earlier conversations. That isn't all about the money, is it all about the bucks? Or do we want to look at what passions, how we can put our passions together with the to gain income of some sort? But I know a lot of pressures come from family when it comes to work and your occupation. And it's a lot of times as well, it's you want to go into something that helps you pay you really well, quick to go into something that helps pay you really well, just to be able to sustain your family, for example. But one thing that I find for sure is that a lot of people are frustrated in the kind of work that they're doing just because of that family pressure of having to take care to sustain themselves, to sustain their family. If it's just them, they don't really have a problem, but once family comes in, it makes it a bit difficult. I don't know if you're feeling that, but once again, feel free to share that in the chat if you're experiencing something like that, or you know someone who's experiencing something like that. We'll definitely like to hop on that conversation sometime next week or the week after. You never know, you might just be lucky, and then we'll call you back on the show to host the show with you. And so I just wanted us to talk about that, for example. One thing that I find that is that my job gives me fulfillment, for example, because I really love the job that I do. It pays well when I get a good client, for example, when I fish out good clients. But I'm also able to do what I love and see the work that I love and smile at it and, give myself the flowers where I deserve and take the feedback as well, as opposed to just listening to my family and just going into something that my family suggests. In Ghana, for example, a lot of families growing up, they either wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, doctor, lawyer. There's a third one, I forgot, a banker. But not all of us are meant to be doctors, lawyers, or bankers. And so I just want to, one thing we do here is encourage. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're having that kind of issue, for example, please take a step back, because post-COVID, one thing that we've seen is mental health is really, really important. Like, you need to make sure that if you're doing something every single day, it's something that brings you fulfillment, for example. And so you want to make sure that you're in a trade, you're in a profession, you're in an occupation that continuously feeds your soul. Not sure if you agree, but I think that is something to think about, and not just follow up the family pressures because my family says to go into this, or my family has always said I'll be a lawyer, and so quickly I ran into the law, for example. You want to make sure that you explore your passions. The good thing about our generation is that there's a lot of people don't just stay in one job like for like 40 years, which used to be like the generation before boomers be capping, but they stay in a job like loyalty forever, like 40 years. Like, you see a lot of 40 years in this, which don't get it twisted, it was really good because they learned the skill, mastered the skill. But one thing post COVID, or one thing our generation has also learned, is to be able to explore different job opportunities, to move from one job to the other, to explore what works and what doesn't work. And so it's not just like, oh, my family wants me to do this, and so I'm not going to do this. If you have a family, not to say that if you have a family business, for example, not to venture in, please absolutely take it on if it's something that you love and you can definitely build that dynasty. But if not, don't feel pressured to like go in. Feel free to take a step back and explore what kind of works for you. You might feel a few times, but at the end of the day, your success story would be really loud because you went through it. You suffered through it, and you will really enjoy the victory at the end. I always talk about 7 Up, failed 6 times, and then the seventh time he was right up. So feel free to, in that regard, to explore something, explore whatever works for you in that regard. I think so. So right now we've covered like jobs, which is something that I deem a pressure. We've talked about finances. We've talked about settling down. We've talked about housing, for example. What's the next thing on the radar is education. Education for me is education is really important. Like, we need to aspire to be lifelong learners consistently in and out of school, constantly learning. My friend and I were talking today. As you all know, the US election happened today, and a lot of my friend and I were having a conversation about how it's so interesting that people don't really understand the system, political system in the US, for example, and same with Canada as well. Most people think that certain things that are decisions that are taken by the federal government is a work of the provincial government, and vice versa. Here in Canada, for example, budget is a federal issue, and then things like roads, things like healthcare are more like on the provincial level as opposed to the federal level. But people don't really know this, and everybody just be blaming like one, like the president, the prime minister, sorry, for example, when in actual facts they should be talking about speaking to provincial leaders and stuff. And here the good thing is that advocacy is really embraced, and so you might want to tap into that as well. But back to why this in particular is a pressure. Oftentimes, one thing that I realize is that everybody's in a hurry to like pursue an education, a higher education, which is good. Like, pursue your bachelor's, pursue your master's, pursue a PhD if you so wish. But also, it's not everybody that would be pursuing that, like an education to a certain level. And that really is okay. If you're feeling that kind of pressure with your family, for example, I think that you should have that conversation and let it be known that, in Canada, certifications go a long way to promote your career. So if you take an education certificate, you might be able to pivot in a certain career direction as opposed to spending money that you don't have on like a higher education that you won't need. See what I mean? Because there are a lot of certifications. Like, there's certifications for everything. like project management, cooking, like everything. There is a certificate for it. Like explore, look through Hamburg College, look through University of Toronto. I myself have been a product of certificates, because I've taken about 2 certificates so far, and they've been a tremendous help for me. I like work, for example, because I've been contributing based on the knowledge that I have from these certifications. And so if you don't have the finances, and these certifications are pretty affordable, like very, very affordable. Like you can like get this as the school to put you on the payment plan, and you can be paying like every month or bi-weekly. And you will definitely get value for your education if you take it seriously. The teachers are super helpful, the professors are super helpful as well. And the good thing about certification is that it's the same professors that are teaching these like masters and PhD that are also teaching the certificate courses. And so if you're really well vested in that education, you will actually get a lot of value for the money that you're paying. And again, don't misquote me. If you need to pursue a master's or a PhD, please do that. But I also want you to know that if you're ever being pressured by your family to pursue this and you don't really need to, do your research. If you don't need to, please, like, don't be feeling like this is the end of the world for you. You can definitely pursue a certificate and be better off. You pay less money, but you still get good value of education that you can use to work with, that you can use to pivot careers. And the good thing about certificates as well is that, unlike maybe a master's where like you kind of do it 2 years and then it's like, oh wow, maybe this is not what I want to do. A certificate gives you the chance to like, you do it like 6 weeks, 9 weeks, and it's like, oh, maybe this is not what I want to do, and so I want to explore something else. But you still get that skill in a short amount of time. See what I mean? And so that, don't feel too pressured if your family is asking you to pursue a higher education. If you don't have the finances for it, for example, and if you don't really, really need it. But speak to somebody under advisement, for example, before you start taking decisions like this. But I speak for myself because I've had that experience, and I absolutely treasure the benefit that I have received from these certificates. So for now, we've spoken about, for anybody who just joined in or who's kind of midway, we're talking about family pressures, and like as a millennial, we've spoken about settling down, which might look like marriage or partnership. Concerning that, we spoke about like cultural differences and like the fact that, for example, being in different cultures, like the male, for example, would come for the woman's hand in marriage, and that kind of puts pressure on the males, for example, at a certain stage of their life. Or it could be vice versa as well. Puts a lot of pressure on the females as well. And settling down also involves a lot of money. If you're like having like a wedding, for example, event centers are not cheap, and so that having pressure from your family can be very daunting. Even this is when you found a partner. When you've not found a partner, the pressure is even worse, because it's like, oh, people want to be alone as well. They don't really want to have a partner, but families don't really understand that necessarily. And so at the end of the day, there's a lot of like issues and disconnects in that regard. And there's a lot of pressure, but please don't fall for the pressure. If you need to like speak to your family, please let them know as well, or find a friend who can help you speak to your family that the pressure is getting a bit much. Next, we spoke about housing, finances, I believe. Finances, we're just talking about how difficult it is to kind of survive and thrive in this generation. A lot of this, just a lot of money, expenses here and there, from like even food is really expensive, for example, in Toronto. But I just even got to understand that it's expensive for like certain reasons, like seats are sold here differently. Like you can't just start planting with seeds that you got from your house. You have to actually buy the seeds from like registered companies, and so that in itself can be expensive, because now you have to buy at a certain price to even plant, and that kind of, so all those kind of systems make things expensive. So living is expensive, and so, but having that pressure from your family to kind of provide like at a certain level simply because you're a millennial at a certain age, that can be a lot of pressure if you're still figuring out yourself and figuring out like, life in general. And sometimes life just starts at 30 for some people. as opposed to 20 for somebody who just found their passion really early and so like just got into it and it kind of worked out. And so that's kind of a pressure as well. We spoke about other pressures after. So we spoke about family, settling down. We spoke about financial pressures as well. We've also spoken about work and occupation, like your type of occupation. For example, getting a white collar job versus following your passion, being an entrepreneur versus being like trying to pursue something that your family kind of planted you in, indoctrinated you in since like birth, for example. And so sometimes it's like that pressure can get a lot. We're spoken about the pressure of housing. Everybody's like moving into a house or moving into a condo, but it sometimes it's really difficult to afford that. And so we just spoke about like family pressures in terms of that, like families visiting while where you're staying, and it's like, oh, I can't host you. I might be able to like book a hotel for you, but that understanding is not there, and so it makes things a bit difficult in that regard. And so family pressures come like when it comes to housing, for example. But please feel free to invest in yourself. Invest in a good home if you're able to afford that. Remember, it's not just about the down payment. There's a lot more cost that goes into getting a house, and so make sure you do that research and don't just let family pressure push you into buying something when you can't really afford it and sustain it. And then we're going to speak about some cultural pressures in the next round. I think we'll just take a quick commercial break, maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll be right back on the show and we'll quickly wrap up. See you soon. Hello, everybody. We're back on the show for the last portion of the this lovely talk. If you missed it, we're talking about family pressures and the possible effects as a millennial. The last segment, we're going to be talking about the effects of these pressures on millennials. One of them is stress from pressures. Stress because people are overworking themselves as millennials, which is really unfortunate because there's a lot of family pressure into providing even when you can't. There's also pressure with like settling down. Sometimes you haven't found a partner, so that is a lot of stress mentally, just trying to find like a really good partner. Another stress can also be like and not can also be another stress is getting overwhelmed with bills when you've taken that wrong decision. A lot of people are really struggling, for example, to sustain a certain lifestyle that they because of the pressure that they receive from their families and just to like create a certain good image. But at the end of the day, it's not worth it because it's creating a lot of stress psychologically, stress physically, stress mentally, stress emotionally, which we don't encourage here. And so if you feel that you're going through some of this stress, we talked about it on one of our previous shows, but please feel free to speak to somebody. Ensure that you speak to somebody. It can be a friend. If you feel like maybe a friend is too close to home and you feel just a bit, feel free to sort professional help. Always speaking to like therapy is always a good option. Is always a good advice to seek therapy if you're feeling stressed and if you're feeling overwhelmed. Please don't let it get really like to a really like bad state. But if you're there as well, please feel free to speak to somebody. But call for help. There's a lot of help. There's a lot of help. Like there's a lot of help. There are a lot of social centers. There's a lot of people who actually care about you and want to support you in the way that they can. And so please feel free, definitely, to seek professional help whenever you're feeling like you're stressed. There's a lot of anxiety as well. With where do I start from? There's a lot of pressure from my family. I don't know what to do. Should I just settle? For example, if you're finding a partner, it's like, okay, this is what I want on my list, but now the pressure is just getting too much. So I'm just going to settle for anybody and just anybody. No, the long-term effect is not going to be good. And so please, if you're feeling some sort of pressure, I'm hoping that I change your mind by letting you think about the long term and the effect of that if you take that wrong decision. Definitely. And so please be careful, please be mindful, and don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed by some sort of pressure. If you're religious as well, I'll say like speak to your religious head, speak to your imam, speak to your pastor, anybody or any elder that you believe that will be able to provide sound counsel and will be able to help you speak to your family if you need to speak to your family. And then the next thing that I'll say that really helps with pressures is knowing yourself and knowing your goals and being genuine about it. If you know yourself and you know your goals and you know what you want to achieve at a certain time, you won't be pressured by everybody kind of speaking into your life in a certain way. You will take your time, you have patience for yourself, you have grace for yourself. And so please, if you're going through a certain pressure of some sort, just take time, dissociate, and feel free, write in your journal, whatever it is, but just go through a time of self-reflection, set your goals, set your priorities. I always suggest SMART, which is specific, is a tool for certain goals. It's specific. Specific means that, like, be exact about what goal it is. Like, I want to save $10,000, for example, by the end of the year. Be very specific about it. It should be measurable. How are you hoping to, like, how do you measure your progress? Is it, okay, every month I check that I've added $1,000 to my savings? That's measurable. You need to make sure that there's a certain accountability as well. Like, who can help you stay accountable in that way. And so you want to make sure that just use the SMART goals because it really, really helps. Like, time sensitive, time bound as well. Like I said, within a certain, like, a year, within the end of the year. So set that time boundary as well. And so you want to make sure that you do that. Some people use like SWOT as well. Like, what is the strength of my goal? What is the weakness of my goal? What are the opportunities that I have? What are the threats? Opportunities are what can help me achieve that goal. Threats are like what's holding me back. Maybe I need transportation for it. I don't have a car yet. Maybe I need like opportunities. I have a good network of friends, and so those people will be helpful, for example. And so that kind of thing really helps. So use like SWOT analysis if you have to. But there are a lot of like applications that help with that. Canva, for example, I know like there's a lot of Etsy templates as well that people sell. And so please invest in yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed by that family pressure. If you need to buy like a planner, buy a planner that will help you ultimately, to get those goals going. So I think, yeah, we're getting to so we've talked about stress. We've also talked about anxieties, and we've talked about how to kind of deal with the stress, which is speaking to like a professional, speaking to a friend. Just make sure you're speaking to somebody who can be a good influence and help you also solve this problem. And then anxieties, we've spoken also about just making sure that you set goals for yourself and priorities for yourself so that you don't just be hearing a lot of noise and be influenced by that. And so I think we'll be I'll just go through everything for now, and then we'll take a commercial break, and then after, if there are any questions or anything like that, I will definitely help address them. So basically today's conversation has been about managing about family pressures. Family pressures look like to different people in different parts of the world. Here in Canada, it looks different from when I was in Ghana, for example. And as a millennial, it looks different as well from like a baby boomer, or it can look different for a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha person. And so we talked about the kind of family pressures that we face, which is financial. We spoke about family pressures like getting a house or housing. We spoke about family pressures like the type of occupation that you're in. We spoke about family pressures like pursuing your education. We spoke about family pressures that can be like culturally induced. And then we spoke about pressures that come that also result from like the type of family that you find yourself, for example, the type of culture that you find yourself. And then the next thing that we spoke about was also like the types of was about stress. Stress is like the results of family pressures. And so please, if you realize that you're getting stressed, take a break and move back and just reflect and see how you can kind of like put yourself together to be able to deal with this kind of pressure. And then speak to a professional, speak to a friend, speak to somebody who can provide certain sorts of advice. That definitely helps to navigate that family pressure. Myself, I'm here. If you want to talk, if you want to message anytime, you can find me Michelle Kobla, LinkedIn. You can find me Facebook. I don't use Facebook as much, but Instagram, Smiling Michi, I'll be here. I can definitely provide some help and some resources. And then any other, if you have any suggestions as well, please feel free to share that as well. But I think we'll go on a quick commercial break, and then I would be right back to just run everything up. See you soon. All right, everybody, I'm back. We have a bit of time more, and I'm excited to be back here. So basically, Voices of Millennials, here we're speaking about pressures, we're speaking about family pressures, and we're speaking about the effects of family pressures. We're speaking about over the period of time, we've spoken about different topics, including careers. We've spoken about we had different conversations. And so one of the things that we've realized is that we need to talk about we've spoken about stress as well. And so when we look at it, we realize that no, we need to address family pressures, because that's one of the major influences when it comes to influences of stress. When your family holds you to a certain standard and you don't meet the standard, or when you feel you're not at that point yet. Life is not really it's not a race, and it's not a comparison situation. Life must be lived an individual in your lane. And so yes, it's okay to look up to people, but you don't want to let your family push you into something that it's not your thing, for example. And so I think for now I'm just going to share, ask a few questions that I really hope that make you think and reflect about if you're feeling some sort of pressure. So the first thing, if you're firstborn, you can raise your hand. I know that was like some sort of game, but if you're there can be pressures as for being the firstborn, for example. If your family keeps asking you and demanding things just simply because you're the firstborn, that can be a pressure that you might not necessarily realize, and so it's something that you might want to look at and consider. Are you facing pressures because you're the last born, for example? Is your family expecting you, comparing you to your older siblings, and it's expecting you to live a certain life or be at a certain level? That can be a sort of pressure as well. Is your family asking you to pursue an education, but you don't see the use of that education at that stage? Yes, that can be a family pressure as well. And so I think you need to accept that you're undergoing that kind of family pressure. Another thing, is your family not excited about the profession that you're in? Are they asking you to be in a certain profession? For example, all our families are everybody in our family is a lawyer, everybody's our family is a banker, for example. Are you feeling something like that, or are you having something like that? Yes, that can be a sort of family pressure. Is your family asking you oh, where's your partner? Where's your partner? Where's your partner? Not saying that they can't ask that, but is it a continuous question? When you go to weddings, it's oh, you're next. Are you next? Where's your partner? Who are you coming with? Is your family not accepting that you want to be alone, for example? That is a pressure in itself. Is your family asking, when are you getting married? When is the wedding? Or what is your wedding looking like? If you're planning the wedding, for example, that can be another pressure. Is your family saying, oh, this person had their wedding like this, or did their decor like this, or did a wedding of 100 people, but you just want to do 50? That can be a pressure as well. Is your family asking you to be in a certain join or be acquainted with a certain religion, but maybe you're choosing to be non-religious, for example? or you're choosing to be in a different kind of religion. That can be a family pressure as well. And so if any of the questions that I ask pertain to you, then you might just be undergoing a certain family pressure. And so you might want to take a step back and, like I said, reflect, gather the courage to speak to your family or ask them for help. Ask help from like any professional, any elderly person that can be of some sort of support for you. So yes, I'm just going to quickly wrap up because we've had a great, lovely conversation today, and I'm hoping that we have an even better one next week with Kemi, famous with all her insightful news all the time, and Anne-Marie, our lovely host, our unreplaceable host. I'm hoping that you enjoyed today's conversation about family pressures, and I'm hoping that you learned something from it, and or if you didn't agree with anything, feel free to share in the comments. I'm definitely excited to speak about it sometime next week. But for now, thank you everybody who was here, who joined me on the show. Thank you very much for your lovely time and spending your evening with me today. And I really, really hope to see you sometime next week. Bye, everybody.